Let me tell you about one of the most unforgettable events in my life. This isn't fiction, it's a true experience, something that no movie or series could ever fully capture. I got married about 12 years ago. At first, I thought my new life would be filled with love, stability, and peace. But from the very beginning, something strange and painful shadowed our happiness. My husband's family had never truly accepted me. They thought he was too young to marry and wanted him to stay single until they found a woman they approved of. But love doesn't wait for permission. He chose me, and we married despite their objections. That decision planted the seed of resentment that would grow into something far darker later on. In the early years, we lived in a small house. Humble, but ours. We had children, and even though times were hard, I tried to make our home warm and filled with laughter. Our bedroom was modest, with a simple wooden closet where we kept our clothes on one side and spare pillows for guests on the other. But soon, little things began to unsettle me. Objects went missing. My scarf, a piece of jewelry, a few personal items, only to reappear in strange places days later. At first, I thought I was just forgetful, but it kept happening. The confusion and tension slowly began to eat away at me. My mind and body started to weaken. I became nervous, restless. A heavy sadness settled over me, and I could barely find the energy to smile. Then came the smell. A foul, indescribable stench that filled the house for days at a time. It wasn't the plumbing. We checked everything. The air just felt wrong, thick and suffocating, as if something unseen was rotting beneath our lives. My husband seemed unaffected. He would spend most of his time outside, leaving me alone in that strange, oppressive atmosphere. Our relationship began to crumble. Every word became a spark for an argument, and I slipped deeper into depression. That was the state of our lives, fragile, tense, and surrounded by something we couldn't name. My husband's family were gardeners, and his friends were farmers. Occasionally, they'd give him bags of potatoes from their fields. He would pour them into large rice sacks and store them in the kitchen cabinet. A simple, practical habit since we didn't have much. But one day, something strange happened again. The potatoes were gone. All of them. Our bed stood in the middle of the room. Simple, wooden, and fixed tightly to the floorboards. That morning, I was lying there with my baby in my arms. He was still nursing, his tiny breaths warm against my skin. My husband was away for work and wouldn't return for another 10 to 12 days, so the house felt especially quiet and empty. It was early, perhaps just after dawn, when I was startled awake by a sudden, heavy thud coming from the kitchen. The sound was unmistakable. The crash of a half-full sack of potatoes falling to the ground behind the cabinet doors. It was loud enough to echo through the small house. Yet strangely, the baby didn't even stir. Half asleep, I mumbled to myself, the bag of potatoes fell. I was so exhausted that I simply turned my head and closed my eyes again. But only moments later, a thought pierced through my foggy mind. Wait! I whispered in my head. We haven't had any potatoes for 3 days. What could have fallen? That realization hit me like a cold wave. Before I could even move, I felt it. A sharp, sudden punch against my back. I froze. The bed was made of solid wood, pressed flat against the ground. There was no way anyone, or anything, could have crawled under it. Yet the blow came again, and again. 3 times in a row. Then a pause, just long enough for my fear to build, followed by 3 more thudding strikes. The rhythm was deliberate. almost mocking. My eyes shot open, but I didn't dare to move a muscle. My body stiffened, every nerve screaming to run, but I couldn't. Even my breathing stopped. My heart pounded so violently that it felt like it might burst from my chest. In my normal state, I would have tried to comfort myself with faith. I would have whispered, "If I see a creature, I will say the name of God, and it will vanish in fear." But at that moment, my lips refused to move. My tongue was heavy, useless. I couldn't even blink. It was as if an unseen force had stolen not only my voice, but my very ability to think. The blows came again, that same strange, deliberate rhythm. 3 thuds, silence. 3 more. Each strike seemed to travel through the bed and into my spine, vibrating inside my bones. I wanted to scream, to jump up, to run to the door. But I was trapped between terror and disbelief. Even the baby remained completely still, sleeping as though the world around us hadn't changed, as though something dark and invisible wasn't pressing its way into our lives. And in that moment, I realized something that made my blood run cold. The sound of the falling sack had not been from the kitchen. It had come from inside the house, from the same room I was lying in. For a few moments, I thought it was finally over. The blows had stopped, and the room was silent again. Painfully silent. My heart was still hammering in my chest, and my hands trembled as I clutched my son tighter. I wanted to get up, to look around, to prove to myself that it was all in my imagination. But I couldn't. My body refused to obey. Fear had taken over completely. My voice, my strength, even my thoughts felt trapped somewhere deep inside me. I don't know why I was speechless. Maybe because I knew, in some part of me, that whatever had touched me wasn't something human. Time passed, though I couldn't say how long. Maybe a few minutes, maybe more. My breathing slowed, and I began to think the nightmare was done. But it wasn't. Without warning, I felt it again. A touch. Someone, or something, brushed the soles of my feet with the lightest movement of fingertips. 3 exclamation marks of pure terror flashed in my mind. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't a dream. It was real. The touch was soft but unmistakable, and it sent a violent jolt through my entire body. It was as if electricity had struck me from head to toe. I gasped, my whole body jerking backward. Instinct took control. I pulled my feet away so fast they scraped against the blanket, and whatever had touched me shot out of the room like an arrow, vanishing through the door in absolute silence. For a second, I couldn't move. Then I heard my baby make a soft sound, just a tiny sigh, and that was enough. My fear turned into desperate strength. I jumped out of bed, clutching my child tightly against my chest. My mind screamed, "Get out! Get out now!" I stumbled into the hall, my hands shaking as I grabbed the baby's small bag. Near the door hung my shawl, the one I usually wore when going out. I pulled it from the clothes rack with trembling fingers and threw it over my shoulders. I didn't care what I looked like. I, who had always told myself to be neat, to stay well-groomed, didn't even think twice. I was barefoot, still in my home dress, hair messy, tears burning my eyes. None of it mattered. All that mattered was getting out of that house. I ran out the door with my baby in my arms, my shawl flying behind me, and the cold morning air hitting my face like a slap. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I didn't stop to lock the door, didn't even look back. I just kept running, down the narrow street, past the neighbors' gardens, straight toward my parents' house. On the way, I called my husband. My voice was shaking so much I could barely speak. When he answered, I said only, "Something's wrong in that house." I can't stay there. Not with the baby. I won't go back until everything is fixed. He was silent for a few moments. Maybe he thought I was imagining things. Maybe he just didn't know what to say. But I knew what I felt. That something had been inside that house with us, and it wanted me to know it was there.